A man stands at his door at midnight. He never expected the most powerful woman in the company, the one who rejected him in front of everyone, to be standing there now, trembling, begging to stay. This isn't a romance. This is a story about survival, trust, and the choices that change everything. Follow my story to the end. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story has traveled. Thank you so much. The crane cab smelled like diesel and old coffee. Ethan Cole sat 50 feet above the construction site, his hands steady on the controls as he lowered a steel beam into place. Below him, workers scattered like ants, their voices lost in the hum of machinery. The morning sun hadn't burned through the fog yet, and everything looked gray and indistinct, like the world was still half asleep. He didn't mind the height. Up here, the world made sense. Everything had a weight, a measurement, a place it belonged. There were no surprises in physics, no emotional landmines, just the clean logic of balance and force. His radio crackled. "Nice and easy, Ethan. 2 feet left." He adjusted the controls with the same precision he'd used for 12 years. The beam slid into position without a tremor, settling into the framework like it had been made for that exact spot. Perfect. "That's lunch, everybody." Ethan killed the engine and climbed down the ladder, boots clanging against metal rungs worn smooth by thousands of descents just like this one. His shoulders ached, but it was the good kind, the kind that reminded him he'd earned his paycheck. He grabbed his thermos from the toolbox on the ground and found a shaded spot near the perimeter fence, away from the noise. He'd just unscrewed the cap when Miguel jogged over, hard hat askew, grinning like he had news. "Yo, Ethan, you here?" Ethan took a sip of lukewarm coffee. "Hear what?" "Company got bought out. Some hotshot CEO from New York, Elena Cross." Miguel dropped onto the concrete beside him. "Heard she's like 30 and already running 3 companies. 3. What were you doing at 30? "Changing diapers," Ethan said. Miguel laughed. "Right, forgot you're an old man now. 32 isn't old." "It is in CEO years, apparently." Miguel pulled out a sandwich, unwrapped it. "Anyway, word is she's cutting dead weight. Whole upper management got reshuffled last month. Kenny said his cousin works at the headquarters, and half the executives are gone." Ethan shrugged. "We're not executives." "Yeah, but still. New boss means new rules, new expectations. You know how it goes." Ethan did know. He'd worked for 6 different site managers in the last 4 years. Bosses came and went like seasons. The work stayed the same. The crane didn't care who signed the checks. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez. "Picked up Lily from school. She's helping me bake cookies." "No rush." He smiled despite himself. Lily was 7, gap-toothed, and obsessed with dinosaurs. She talked nonstop about pterodactyls and whether T-Rexes could swim and why Triceratops had 3 horns instead of 2. She asked questions Ethan didn't know how to answer, and she laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and she was the only reason he got out of bed most mornings. 3 years ago, his wife died in a car accident. Sarah. She'd been on her way home from the grocery store when a semi ran a red light. One moment she was there, texting him about what to make for dinner, and the next, she wasn't. The grief had been so sharp it didn't even feel like sadness. It felt like being hollowed out with a spoon. For months, Ethan walked through life like a ghost. He went to work, picked up Lily from daycare, made dinner, put her to bed, stared at the ceiling until dawn. Repeat. People told him it would get easier. They said time healed all wounds. They were wrong. It didn't get easier. It just got quieter. The screaming inside his head faded to a dull roar, and he learned to function around it. But love? That part of him had shut down completely. He didn't date, didn't even think about it. The idea of letting someone in, of being vulnerable again, felt impossible. Dangerous. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and being asked to jump. So he didn't. He focused on Lily. On work. On the small, manageable pieces of life that didn't require his heart. He finished his coffee and headed back to the crane. Push step. 2 weeks later, Elena Cross visited the site for the first time. Ethan didn't know she was coming. Nobody did. One minute, he was inspecting a cable spool near the materials yard, checking for frays and weak points. The next, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled through the gate and parked near the main office trailer. The door opened and out stepped a woman in a tailored gray suit that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. She was younger than he expected, early 30s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything at once. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and not caring what anyone thought about it. The site manager, Jerry, practically tripped over a stack of lumber rushing to greet her. "Ms. Cross, we weren't expecting you until next week. I don't announce site visits," she said, her voice calm and controlled, like she was stating a fact rather than making a point. "I want to see how things actually run." Jerry stammered through some explanation about schedules and timelines and upcoming inspections. Elena wasn't listening. She was already walking toward the foundation where the crew was pouring concrete, her heels somehow navigating the uneven ground without hesitation. Ethan watched from a distance. She stopped to talk to one of the concrete guys, Ramirez, who'd been doing this for 20 years and didn't suffer fools. She asked him something. He answered. She nodded, asked a follow-up question. Ramirez actually smiled. Then she turned, and her gaze swept across the yard like a searchlight. It landed on Ethan. For a second, neither of them moved. Then she started walking toward him, and Jerry scrambled to keep up, his clipboard flapping uselessly at his side. "That's Ethan Cole," Jerry said, slightly out of breath. "One of our crane operators. Best we've got, honestly. Never missed a day, never had an accident, runs the tightest." "How long have you been running cranes?" Elena asked, cutting Jerry off without looking at him. Ethan straightened. 12 years. "You like it?" Most people asked that question like they were making polite conversation. She asked it like she actually wanted to know. "Yeah," he said. "I do." "Why?" He hesitated. Most people didn't care about the why. They just wanted to hear that you showed up and did your job. But she was still looking at him, waiting, so he answered honestly. "It's honest work. You do it right, people go home safe. You mess up, people get hurt. There's no middle ground." I like that. Something shifted in her expression. Not a smile exactly, but something close. A recognition. "Good answer." She turned to Jerry. "I want a full safety audit by Friday, and I want to see the equipment maintenance logs for the last 6 months. All of them." "Of course, Ms. Cross. Absolutely. I'll have them on your desk by tomorrow morning." Jerry's face went pale. "Tomorrow." "Right, yes. Of course." Elena gave Ethan one more look, brief, assessing, then walked back to the SUV. The door closed, the engine started, and she was gone, leaving behind the faint smell of expensive perfume and a silence that felt heavier than it should. Miguel appeared at Ethan's shoulder, eyes wide. "Dude, she totally checked you out. She was asking about the crane." "Nah, man, that was something else. That was interest." Ethan shook his head. "You're seeing things. I'm telling you, she looked at you like—" "Drop it, Miguel." Miguel grinned but didn't push. Ethan turned back to the cable spool, but his mind wasn't on the work anymore. He kept replaying the conversation. The way she'd asked why. The way she'd looked at him when he answered. It didn't mean anything. She was the CEO. He was a crane operator. That was the end of it. Except it wasn't. Uckum. Over the next month, Elena showed up at the site 6 more times. She never announced her visits. She'd just appear, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes late in the afternoon, ask questions, take notes, and leave. And every single time, she found a reason to talk to Ethan. It started small. She asked about load capacities and why certain rigging configurations were safer than others. She wanted to know how he calculated wind resistance and what happened if the ground wasn't level. Questions that most executives wouldn't bother asking because the answers were too technical, too boring. But Elena wasn't most executives. Once, she asked if she could climb into the cab. Ethan blinked. "You want to go up?" "I want to understand what you see from up there." So he took her up. The ladder was narrow, and she climbed it without hesitation, her movements careful but confident. When they reached the cab, she squeezed into the passenger seat, a space not designed for passengers, and looked out at the site below. "This is incredible," she said quietly. "It's just a construction site." "No, it's perspective." She pointed at the workers below. "From down there, everything feels chaotic, random. But from up here, you can see the pattern, the structure. It all makes sense." Ethan started the controls, walked her through a simple lift. He explained the balance, the angles, the margin for error. She asked smart questions, caught on to things faster than most people. When they climbed back down, she turned to him. You're good at this. It's my job. No, you're better than that. You think 3 steps ahead. Most people don't. He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. She tilted her head, studying him with those sharp eyes. You don't talk much, do you? Not unless I have something to say. I like that. She paused, and for a moment something flickered across her face, something raw and unguarded. Most people talk just to fill the silence. It's exhausting. There was weight in those words, like she was talking about more than just small talk. Then the moment passed, and she was all business again. Keep up the good work, Ethan. She walked away, and he stood there feeling like he'd just been hit by something he couldn't name. Miguel noticed. Of course Miguel noticed. Bro, she's into you. They were sitting in Ethan's truck during lunch, windows down, the smell of burgers and exhaust mixing in the air. Ethan bit into his sandwich. She's not into me. She's doing her job. Her job doesn't include climbing into your crane cab and asking about your life philosophy. I didn't give her my life philosophy. I explained load distribution. Tomato, tomato. Miguel grinned. I'm telling you, man, she looks at you different. You're reading too much into it. Am I? Because last week she asked Jerry about your schedule. She wanted to know what days you work. Ethan frowned. How do you know that? Jerry told me. He thinks she's planning to promote you or something, move you into management. I don't want to be in management. That's not the point. The point is she's paying attention, to you, specifically. Ethan crumpled up the burger wrapper. Even if she was, which she's not, it doesn't matter. She's the CEO. I'm just a guy who moves steel around. There's no world where that works. Miguel leaned back, shaking his head. You're impossible, you know that? A beautiful, successful woman is interested, and you're sitting here making excuses. I'm being realistic. You're being scared. The words landed harder than Miguel probably intended. Ethan looked out the windshield at the site, at the half-finished building rising from the dirt. Maybe I am, he said quietly, but I've got reasons. Miguel's expression softened. I know, man, I know, but you can't live in a bunker forever. I'm not in a bunker. I'm just focused on Lily, on keeping things stable. Stable's good, but it's not the same as living. Ethan didn't have an answer for that, so he started the truck and drove back to work. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Ethan sat on the back porch with a beer he wasn't really drinking. The yard was dark except for the glow from the kitchen window. Crickets chirped in the grass. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Elena Cross. I hope it's okay that I got your number from HR. I wanted to ask you something. Ethan stared at the screen. His first instinct was not to respond, to pretend he hadn't seen it, but his thumb was already moving. What is it? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Do you ever feel like you're pretending to be someone you're not? Ethan read the message twice. It wasn't what he expected. It wasn't professional. It was personal, raw. He typed, all the time. The response came faster this time. Me too. Ethan set the phone down, heart beating a little faster than it should. He picked it up again. Why are you asking me this? Because you're the only person I've met in the last year who seems real. Everyone else is performing. You're just you. He didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if there was anything to say. So he just wrote, I don't know if that's a compliment or not. It is. He stared at the words, then he typed, You should get some sleep. You too. The conversation ended, but Ethan sat there for another hour, turning it over in his mind. She was reaching out, not as a CEO, as a person, and he didn't know what to do with that. The texts continued. Never long conversations, just moments. She'd send him something at odd hours, 10 at night, 6 in the morning, and he'd respond when he could. Do you think people can change? Really change? I think people can try. Whether they succeed is different. What's the difference? Trying is about effort. Succeeding is about who you are when no one's watching. There was a long pause before her next message. That's depressing, or honest. Maybe both. Another night. Lily asked me today if you ever get lonely. What did you say? I said sometimes. But I have her, so it's okay. Is it? Ethan looked at the question for a long time. I don't know. The wall between them, the one that separated boss from employee, CEO from crane operator, was cracking, and Ethan didn't know if he wanted to fix it or tear it down completely. 6 weeks after Elena's first visit, Jerry pulled Ethan aside after the morning safety meeting. Ms. Cross wants you at a client dinner Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Wear something nice. Ethan frowned. Why me? She didn't say, just said she wanted you there. Jerry clapped him on the shoulder. Don't screw it up. Ethan wanted to say no. He had to pick up Lily, make dinner, help with homework. But Mrs. Alvarez offered to watch her, practically insisted, and Lily was thrilled at the idea of having pizza and watching movies with the neighbor's cat. So Thursday night, Ethan went home, showered, and put on the one good shirt he owned, a blue button-down he'd worn to Sarah's funeral and hadn't touched since. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. When had he last dressed up for anything? The restaurant was downtown, one of those places with cloth napkins and waiters who refilled your water glass before you even realized it was empty. Ethan walked in and immediately felt out of place. Everyone else looked like they belonged, like they ate in places like this all the time. Elena was already there, seated at a long table near the window with 5 other people. She looked up when he entered, and something in her face relaxed. Relief, maybe. Ethan, good. Sit here. She gestured to the chair beside her. He sat. The other people at the table were clearly clients. Expensive suits, easy confidence, the kind of people who closed million-dollar deals before breakfast. One of them, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a Rolex that caught the light, leaned forward. So this is the famous Ethan Cole. Elena's been singing your praises for weeks. Has she? Ethan glanced at Elena. She didn't react, her expression perfectly neutral. She says you run the tightest crew she's ever seen. High praise, coming from her. Elena doesn't hand out compliments unless they're earned. I just do my job, Ethan said. The man smiled. Modest, too. I like that. Hard to find these days. Dinner started. The conversation was all business, contracts, timelines, profit margins, risk assessments. Ethan stayed quiet, answering when spoken to, but mostly just listening. Elena was in her element here, sharp and confident, deflecting difficult questions and steering the conversation with surgical precision. But halfway through the main course, the silver-haired man, his name was Richard something, Ethan hadn't caught the last name, turned the conversation personal. So, Elena, you've been running this company for what, 6 months now? Impressive turnaround. But I have to ask, how do you manage it all? The travel, the long hours, the constant pressure must be hard on your personal life. Elena's smile didn't falter, but Ethan saw her fingers tighten slightly around her wine glass. I manage just fine. No Mr. Cross waiting at home, though? No. Richard chuckled, the sound oily and self-satisfied. Well, that's a shame. A woman like you shouldn't be spending all her time alone. His gaze slid to Ethan, eyes glinting. Unless, of course, you've got someone keeping you company. What about this one? You two seem awfully close. The table went quiet. Every eye turned toward them. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. Elena set down her glass with deliberate care. When she spoke, her voice was cool, controlled. Ethan is a trusted employee, one of the best crane operators I've worked with, but that's all he is. Richard raised his glass. Of course, I didn't mean to imply, Ethan is a valued member of my team, Elena continued, her tone sharpening just slightly. But I don't mix business with my personal life. It's a rule I don't break, ever. The words landed like a slap. Ethan kept his face neutral, but inside something twisted. He'd been stupid, monumentally stupid. All those texts, those conversations, he'd let himself believe there was something more. But she'd just made it crystal clear, in front of a table full of strangers, that he was nothing, just a trusted employee. Richard laughed, oblivious to the tension. Good policy, keeps things clean. The conversation moved on. Ethan smiled when he was supposed to, nodded when spoken to, and counted the seconds until he could leave. When dessert finally arrived, he excused himself. I need to check on my daughter. Elena looked at him. Is everything okay? Fine, just need to make a call. He walked outside, stood in the parking lot under the streetlights, and breathed. His hands were shaking. Not from anger, well, partly from anger, but from something else. Embarrassment, hurt, the realization that he'd been living in a fantasy. He pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Alvarez. Lily was fine, already asleep on the couch with the cat curled up beside her. When he went back inside, Elena was saying goodbye to the clients. She caught his eye, gestured toward the exit. He followed her out. In the parking lot, she turned to face him. "Thank you for coming tonight." "No problem." "You did well. Richard can be difficult, but you handled it." "Did I?" She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. "Nothing. Have a good night, Ms. Cross." He started walking toward his truck. She called after him. "Ethan, wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "Did I do something wrong?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "No, you were perfectly clear." "About what?" He turned. "About what I am. Just a trusted employee, right?" Her face went pale. "That's not... It's fine. I get it. I crossed a line. I won't do it again." "Ethan, good night, Elena." He got in his truck and drove away, leaving her standing there in the parking lot, alone. Whoa. The drive home was silent except for the hum of the engine. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, jaw tight, replaying the moment over and over. Ethan is a trusted employee. That's all he is. He'd been an idiot, a complete idiot. All those late-night texts, those conversations that felt like they meant something. He'd built it all in his head. She'd never said anything explicit, never crossed any professional line. He was the one who'd let his imagination run wild. And now he felt like a fool. By the time he pulled into his driveway, he'd made a decision. He was done. He'd finish out the week, then put in his notice. Find another job. Something simple. Something that didn't involve Elena Cross and her perfectly controlled life. Inside, Mrs. Alvarez was waiting. "How was dinner?" "Fine. Thanks for watching her." He carried Lily to her room, tucked her in, and stood there for a long time, watching her sleep. She mumbled something about dinosaurs, her hand curled under her cheek. She was enough. She had to be. The next morning, Ethan sat at his kitchen table and wrote a resignation letter. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately. Professional, brief. He didn't give a reason. He didn't need to. He planned to give it to Jerry, avoid the whole mess of dealing with Elena directly. But before he could leave for work, his phone rang. "Elena." He almost didn't answer. Then, against every instinct screaming at him to let it go to voicemail, he picked up. "Ethan?" Her voice was clipped, tight. "I need to talk to you." "I'm busy." "It's important." "I'll catch you next week." "Ethan, please." There was something in her voice, something that cut through his anger. Not the controlled CEO, something else, something fragile. "What is it?" he asked. "Not over the phone. Can you meet me? Tonight?" He should have said no, should have ended it right there, clean and simple, but instead he heard himself say, "Where?" "My place. I'll text you the address." The call ended. Ethan stared at his phone, heart pounding. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake. But he was going to make it anyway. Elena's building looked different at night. The glass facade reflected the city lights, cold and impersonal. Ethan sat in his truck in the parking garage for 10 minutes, engine off, trying to convince himself to leave. The resignation letter was folded in his jacket pocket. He could just slide it under her door and be done with it. But he'd said he'd come. And despite everything, he didn't break his word. He took the elevator to the 23rd floor. The hallway was empty, quiet, except for the hum of ventilation. He found her door and knocked before he could change his mind. Elena opened it immediately, like she'd been waiting on the other side. She looked different than she had at dinner. No suit, no armor, just jeans and a white t-shirt, hair loose around her shoulders. Her eyes were red. "You came," she said. "You asked me to." She stepped back. "Come in." The apartment was exactly what he expected. Sleek, modern, expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Minimalist furniture that looked like it came from a catalog. But something was off. There were no pictures on the walls, no books on the shelves, no plants, no clutter, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived here. It looked like a hotel room someone had been stuck in for too long. Elena closed the door and stood there, arms crossed, like she didn't know what to do with her hands. "You want a drink?" "No?" "I do." She walked to the kitchen, poured herself whiskey from a bottle that looked expensive and mostly full. Her hand shook slightly as she lifted the glass. Ethan stayed by the door. What did you want to talk about? She took a drink, set the glass down harder than necessary. I owe you an apology. You said that on the phone. I know, but I need to say it to your face. She turned to look at him. What I said at dinner about you being just an employee, it was wrong. And it was cruel, and I've been sick about it all night. Ethan's jaw tightened. You were just being honest. No, I was being a coward. What's the difference? Honesty would have been telling Richard to mind his own business. What I did was throw you under the bus to protect myself. She grabbed the glass again, drained it, and I hated myself the second the words left my mouth. Then why didn't you say something after? Because I panicked, her voice cracked. Because I didn't know how to fix it without making it worse. Because I'm apparently very good at running companies and very bad at being a human being. Ethan didn't move. The anger was still there, sitting heavy in his chest, but it was tangled up with something else now. Confusion, frustration, the sense that he was missing part of the picture. Why am I here, Elena? She set the glass down, pressed her palms against the counter. Richard's been making comments for months. About me, about my personal life, about whether I'm sleeping with half the men on my payroll. He does it in meetings, at dinners, always with this smile like it's just a joke. But it's not a joke. It's a test. A test for what? To see if I'm serious, if I'm professional, if I'm actually capable of running a company, or if I'm just some young woman who got lucky. She turned to face him. If I'd defended you last night, if I'd said anything that suggested we were more than colleagues, he would have used it. He would have told every potential client that I'm unprofessional, that I let my personal life interfere with business decisions, that I can't be trusted with their money. Ethan absorbed that. So you sacrifice me to keep your reputation intact. Yes. She didn't flinch from it, and I know how that sounds. I know what it makes me. But I've spent 3 years building this company from nothing. 3 years proving I belong in rooms where people like Richard think I'm just there to look pretty and take notes. And if I lose that, if I lose their respect, I lose everything. So what, you just let him win? I let him think he won. There's a difference. She moved closer, and Ethan could see the exhaustion in her face. But you're right. I threw you under the bus, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Ethan. He wanted to stay angry. It would be easier that way, but the anger was leaking out of him, replaced by something messier, understanding maybe. Or just the realization that this whole situation was more complicated than he'd thought. Why did you text me? He asked. All those late-night messages. What was that about? Elena looked away. Because I was lonely, and you were the first person in years who didn't want something from me. How do you know I don't want something? Because you don't ask for anything. You don't try to impress me. You don't angle for promotions or favors or access. She met his eyes again. You just answer my questions, honestly, like I'm a person, not a title. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. This is a bad idea. What is? Whatever this is. You're my boss. I'm just a guy who... Don't! Her voice went sharp. Don't say just a guy. You're not just anything. Elena, I mean it. You think I climb into random crane cabs? You think I text employees at midnight asking if they ever feel like frauds? She stepped closer. I don't do that. I don't let people in. But I let you in, and I don't even know why, and it scares the hell out of me. The silence stretched between them. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat, feel the weight of the resignation letter in his pocket. I was going to quit, he said finally. Her face went pale. What? I wrote the letter this morning. I was going to give it to Jerry on Monday. Because of what I said? Because I crossed a line I shouldn't have crossed. Because I let myself think there was something here when there wasn't. But there is something here. She said it quietly, like she was confessing to a crime. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it goes, but it's there. And pretending it isn't doesn't make it go away. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the CEO, past the armor, to the person underneath. She was scared, just as scared as he was. I have a daughter, he said. I know. She's 7. She's been through enough. I can't bring someone into her life unless I'm sure. Sure of what? That it's real. That it's not just loneliness or convenience or some fantasy we've built up in our heads. Elena nodded slowly. So what do we do? I don't know. He pulled the resignation letter from his pocket, stared at it, then he tore it in half. But I'm not quitting. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I need the job. And because Lily likes Mrs. Alvarez, and if I quit, we'd have to move. And I'm not doing that to her. Okay? But we need boundaries, real ones. No more late-night texts, no more personal conversations at work. If we're going to figure out what this is, we do it away from the company. Agreed. And if it doesn't work, if it goes sideways, I walk away. No drama, no mess. Clean break. Elena held his gaze. Okay. They stood there in her empty apartment, the city glittering behind them, and Ethan felt like he was standing at the edge of that cliff again, the one he'd been avoiding for 3 years. I should go, he said. Okay. He made it to the door before she spoke again. Ethan? He turned. I meant what I said. You're not just anything. He didn't have an answer for that, so he left. The drive home felt longer than it should have. His mind was racing, turning over everything she'd said, everything he'd said, trying to find solid ground in a situation that felt like quicksand. When he got home, Lily was asleep in her bed, clutching her stuffed triceratops. He sat on the edge of her mattress and watched her breathe. I don't know what I'm doing, kiddo, he whispered, but I'm trying. She didn't wake up, kissed her forehead, and went to his own room, where he lay awake until dawn. The next week was strange. Ethan went to work, ran the crane, came home. Elena didn't visit the site. She didn't text. It was like they'd agreed to hit pause, and now they were both waiting to see who would unpause first. Miguel noticed the change immediately. What happened with the CEO? Nothing. Bullshit. You've been weird all week. I'm not weird. You're quieter than usual, which is saying something, and you keep checking your phone like you're waiting for a message. Ethan didn't respond. Miguel was right, but admitting it felt like giving something away. On Friday, Jerry pulled him aside after the safety meeting. Ms. Cross wants to see you. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, at the downtown office. Ethan's stomach dropped. What for? Didn't say. Just said to make sure you're there. The weekend dragged. Ethan took Lily to the park, helped her with a school project about ocean animals, made pancakes for breakfast. Normal things. Safe things. But his mind kept drifting to Monday, to what Elena wanted, to whether this was the beginning of something or the end. Sunday night, his phone buzzed. Elena, I know we said boundaries, but I wanted you to know, Monday isn't about work. It's about us. If you want there to be an us, Ethan stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. I'll be there. Monday morning, he wore the blue shirt again. He dropped Lily off at school, kissed her goodbye, and drove downtown. The office building was tall, glass and steel, the kind of place where everyone looked like they had somewhere important to be. Elena's office was on the top floor. Her assistant, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a polite smile, told him to go right in. Elena was standing by the window when he entered. She turned and he saw that she'd dressed down, slacks and a sweater instead of a suit. She looked nervous. Thanks for coming, she said. You made it sound important. It is. She gestured to the couch. Sit, please. He sat. She didn't. She paced instead, which was so unlike her that Ethan felt his own anxiety spike. I've been thinking all week, she said, about what you said, about boundaries and figuring out what this is. And I realized something. What? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone in without it being transactional. Every relationship I've had, professional or personal, has been about what I can offer or what they can take. I don't know how to just be. Ethan leaned forward. So what are you saying? I'm saying I want to try. With you. But I need you to understand what you're getting into. She finally stopped pacing, looked at him directly. I work 80-hour weeks. I travel constantly. I have enemies, people who would love to see me fail. And if they find out about you, they'll use it. They'll say I'm unprofessional, that I'm a liability, that I can't separate my personal life from business. I know. And you're okay with that? No, but I'm willing to deal with it. She sat down beside him, close but not touching. Why? Because I've spent 3 years in a bunker, and I'm tired of it. And because when I'm with you, I don't feel like I'm pretending anymore. Elena's eyes went glassy. I don't want to hurt you. You will. At some point you will. And I'll probably hurt you too. That's how this works. That's depressing. Or realistic. He echoed her words from one of their texts, and she smiled despite herself. So what now? She asked. Now we take it slow. We figure out what this is without blowing up our lives, and we keep Lily out of it until we're sure. How long is that? I don't know, months maybe. She's already lost one person. I'm not introducing her to someone who might not stick around. Elena nodded. That's fair. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Elena reached out and took his hand. It was the first time they'd touched beyond a handshake, and the contact sent a jolt through him. I'm scared, she said quietly. Me too. What if we screw this up? Then we screw it up. But at least we tried. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and Ethan wrapped his arm around her. They stayed like that for a long time, two people trying to figure out how to trust again. Over the next month, they built something fragile and tentative. They met for coffee on Saturday mornings while Lily was at soccer practice. They went for drives on Sunday afternoons, nowhere in particular, just talking. Elena told him about growing up in New York, about her father who'd built a company from nothing and lost it to bankruptcy when she was 15, about watching him give up, watching him shrink, and vowing she'd never let that happen to her. Ethan told her about Sarah, about the accident, the grief, the year he'd spent going through the motions, about Lily asking when Mommy was coming home and not knowing how to answer. They didn't sleep together, didn't even kiss. It felt too fast, too fragile. Instead, they just learned each other, the rhythms, the fears, the pieces that didn't fit anywhere else. At work, they were professionals. Elena visited the site less often, and when she did, she treated Ethan the same as everyone else. No special attention, no lingering looks. It was careful, deliberate, but sometimes when no one was watching, their eyes would meet across the yard, and Ethan would feel that pull again, that sense of something inevitable. Then Richard came back. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Ethan was running a lift when Jerry's voice crackled over the radio. Ethan, we've got visitors. Wrap up and come down. He finished the lift, climbed down, and saw them immediately. Richard and two other men in suits standing with Elena near the office trailer. Richard was smiling his oily smile, gesturing at the construction like he owned it. Ethan walked over. Elena's face was carefully neutral, but he caught the tension in her shoulders. Ethan, Richard called out, good to see you again. I was just telling Elena how impressed I was with the operation here. You're doing excellent work. Thank you. In fact, I was thinking, we've got a project starting up in Denver, big commercial development. We could use someone with your expertise on site. What do you say? 6-month contract, generous pay, all expenses covered. Ethan glanced at Elena. Her face gave nothing away. I'm not looking to relocate, he said carefully. Oh, it's not permanent, just 6 months. You'd be back before you know it. I have a daughter. I can't leave her for 6 months. Richard waved a hand. Bring her with you. We'll set you up in corporate housing, good schools in Denver. I appreciate the offer, but no. Richard's smile thinned. You sure? This is a significant opportunity. Could really advance your career. I'm sure. There was a beat of silence. Then Richard turned to Elena. Well, you can't fault a man for trying. Loyalty's hard to find these days. Ethan's very good at his job, Elena said evenly. That's why I hired him. Of course. Richard checked his watch. We should get going. Lots to cover before the board meeting. He shook Elena's hand, nodded at Ethan, and left with his associates. The moment they were out of earshot, Elena turned to Ethan. Are you okay? Fine. What was that about? A test. He's trying to see if he can poach my best people. If you'd said yes, he would have used it as proof that I can't retain talent. So he doesn't actually have a project in Denver. Oh, he probably does. But that's not why he offered it to you. Ethan shook his head. This is exhausting. Welcome to my world. She glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Thank you for saying no. I didn't do it for you. I did it because I meant what I said. I'm not uprooting Lily. I know, but still. Thank you. She walked away before he could respond, and Ethan stood there feeling like he'd just passed some kind of test he hadn't known he was taking. That night, Elena texted him. Can I see you? I know it's not our usual day, but I need to talk. Where? My place. 8 o'clock? Ethan checked with Mrs. Alvarez, who was happy to watch Lily. He drove to Elena's apartment, wondering what was so urgent it couldn't wait until Saturday. She opened the door looking shaken. Not scared, exactly, but close. "What happened?" he asked. "Richard called after you left. He made me an offer." "What kind of offer?" "The kind where he buys a controlling share of my company and I stay on as CEO in name only." She poured herself a drink, hands steadier this time. "He framed it as a merger, a partnership, but it's a takeover. He wants to gut everything I've built and turn it into another piece of his empire." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "What did you say?" "I told him I'd think about it, but we both know what that means. If I say no, he'll come after me. He'll poach my clients, my staff, everything. He'll make it his mission to destroy me. So let him try." She looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "You don't understand. Richard has resources I can't match. Connections, capital, lawyers. If he wants to bury me, he can." "Then fight back." "With what? I've spent everything building this company. I'm leveraged to the hilt. One bad quarter and I'm done." Ethan crossed the room, took the glass from her hand, set it down. "Listen to me. You didn't build this company by playing it safe. You built it by being smarter and tougher than everyone else. So stop acting like you've already lost." "I'm not acting like—" "Yes, you are. You're letting him get in your head. That's what he wants. He wants you scared." "Well, it's working. Then unwork it." He held her gaze. "You're the most capable person I've ever met. You don't need Richard's money or his approval. You just need to remember who you are." Her eyes were glassy again. "What if I can't beat him?" "Then you go down swinging, but you don't give up, not to him." She stared at him for a long moment, then she kissed him. It wasn't soft or tentative, it was desperate, like she was drowning and he was air. Ethan froze for half a second, then kissed her back, his hands finding her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "Sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't apologize. I just needed—" "I know." He rested his forehead against hers. "I know." They stood there holding each other, and Ethan realized they'd just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. And he wasn't sure if that was terrifying or the best thing that had happened in years. Maybe both. They stayed like that for a while, wrapped up in each other, neither of them willing to let go first. When Elena finally pulled back, her eyes were clearer, some of the panic replaced by something steadier. "I should let you go," she said. "It's late." "Do you want me to go?" She hesitated. "No, but you should anyway." Ethan understood. Whatever had just happened between them, whatever line they'd crossed, it needed space to breathe. Rushing it would only make things messier. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "I will." He drove home through empty streets, his lips still tingling from the kiss, his mind racing. This was dangerous territory. Elena was his boss. She was dealing with a hostile takeover attempt, and he was a single father who couldn't afford to blow up his life on something that might not last. But when he climbed into bed that night, all he could think about was the way she'd looked at him, like he was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting under her feet. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Elena threw herself into fighting Richard's takeover attempt. She worked 18-hour days, meeting with lawyers, accountants, potential investors. Ethan barely saw her except in passing at the site, and when he did, she looked exhausted. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. This wasn't his world. He couldn't negotiate deals or restructure debt. All he could do was keep showing up, keep doing his job, and hope that was enough. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Ethan was in the crane cab, midway through a lift, when his phone rang. He ignored it. The beam was tricky, the wind was picking up, and he needed to focus. But the phone kept ringing and ringing. Finally, he set the load down, killed the engine, and checked. 6 missed calls from Elena. 3 voicemails. His stomach dropped. He climbed down fast, nearly slipping on the ladder, and called her back. She answered on the first ring. "Ethan." Her voice was wrong, tight and scared in a way he'd never heard before. "What happened?" "I need you to come to my apartment. Now. Please." "Elena, what's going on?" "I can't explain over the phone. Just, please, I need you." The line went dead. Ethan told Jerry he had an emergency and left the site without waiting for a response. The drive to Elena's building took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. His mind went to the worst places: an accident, a lawsuit, something with Richard. He parked illegally, ran into the lobby, and took the elevator up. When the doors opened, Elena was standing in the hallway outside her apartment. She looked pale, her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding something in. "What happened?" he asked. "Inside. I need to show you something." She led him into the apartment and closed the door. Then she turned to face him, and he saw tears on her cheeks. "Someone's been following me," she said. Ethan went cold. "What?" "For the past week, maybe longer. I thought I was being paranoid at first, but..." She pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and showed him a series of photos. Her leaving the office, her at a coffee shop, her walking into this building. The photos had been sent to her phone from an unknown number. No message, just the pictures. "When did you get these?" Ethan asked, his voice low and dangerous. "An hour ago. All at once." "Did you call the police?" "And tell them what? That someone took pictures of me in public? They'll say there's nothing they can do." "This is stalking, Elena. This is..." "I know what it is." She took the phone back, stared at the screen. "And I know who's behind it. Richard. His name isn't on it. It never will be, but this is exactly the kind of thing he does when he wants to send a message." Ethan felt rage building in his chest, hot and immediate. "What message?" "That he knows everything, where I go, who I see, that I'm not safe." She looked at him, and the fear in her eyes was raw. "He's trying to break me before the board meeting next week. If I show up rattled, if I look weak, they'll side with him." "You're not weak." "I feel weak." Her voice cracked. "I feel like I'm losing my mind. Every time I leave the building, I wonder if someone's watching. Every car that parks near mine, every person who walks too close, I can't stop looking over my shoulder." Ethan pulled her into his arms, and she collapsed against him, shaking. He held her tight, jaw clenched, thinking about all the ways he wanted to make Richard pay for this. "You're staying here tonight," he said. "Locks on the doors, curtains closed. Tomorrow, we're getting you a security system. And if this escalates, we're going to the police whether they take it seriously or not." "Ethan, I'm not asking." She nodded against his chest. "Okay." They spent the next hour making the apartment as secure as they could. Ethan checked every window, every lock, even looked at the fire escape to make sure no one could access it from outside. Elena watched him work, arms still wrapped around herself, looking small in a way that made his chest ache. When he was done, he made her tea. She didn't drink it, just held the mug like it was something to anchor to. "I should call Mrs. Alvarez," Ethan said. "Let her know I'll be late picking up Lily." "You don't have to stay." "Yes, I do." Elena looked at him. "Why?" "Because you asked me to come. And because if I leave you here alone, I won't be able to sleep." She set the mug down. "What about Lily?" "Mrs. Alvarez will keep her overnight. She's done it before." He pulled out his phone, sent the text. "It's not a problem. I don't want to be the reason you're not with your daughter." "You're not. This is my choice." Elena's eyes filled again. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I dragged you into this mess." "You didn't drag me anywhere. I walked in with my eyes open." "Did you? Because I don't think either of us knew it would get this bad." Ethan sat down beside her on the couch. "No. But we're here now, so we deal with it." She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. They sat in silence, the city lights glowing through the windows, and Ethan thought about how fast everything had shifted. A month ago, he'd been ready to quit. Now he was sitting in Elena's apartment, holding her while she fell apart, and he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Around midnight, Elena finally fell asleep, her head on his shoulder. Ethan stayed awake, listening to every sound in the building, every car that passed on the street below. He wasn't leaving, not tonight, not until he was sure she was safe. At some point, he dozed off. When he woke, gray light was filtering through the windows, and Elena was gone. He sat up, heart pounding, and found her in the kitchen making coffee. "You're awake," she said. "You should have woken me. You looked like you needed the sleep." She handed him a mug. "Thank you for staying." "You don't have to thank me." "I do." "You didn't have to do any of this." Ethan took a sip of coffee. It was terrible, too strong, too bitter, but he didn't say anything. What's the plan for today? Board meeting at 10. I need to present my counteroffer to Richard's proposal and convince them I'm the better option. Are you ready? I don't know. She sat down across from him. I've been working on this presentation for 2 weeks. I know every number, every projection, but if I walk in there scared, it won't matter. They'll see it. Then don't be scared. Easier said than done. I didn't say it was easy. I said, don't do it. He set the mug down. Richard's counting on you being rattled. So don't give him what he wants. Walk in there like you own the room, because you do. Elena stared at him. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. You have a way of cutting through all the noise. Someone has to. She reached across the table and took his hand. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out. You always do. Maybe, but I'm glad I don't have to. They sat there for a moment, hands linked, and Ethan felt the weight of everything unsaid between them. This wasn't just about fighting off Richard anymore. This was about what came after, about whether they could build something real in the wreckage. At 9:30, Ethan left so Elena could get ready for the meeting. He drove to Mrs. Alvarez's house to pick up Lily, who was eating pancakes and watching cartoons. Daddy! She launched herself at him, syrup still on her face. Hey, kiddo. He hugged her tight. You have fun? Mrs. Alvarez let me stay up late. We watched 3 movies. 3? Mrs. Alvarez shrugged, smiling. She's a good negotiator. Ethan thanked her, bundled Lily into the truck, and drove her to school. She chattered the whole way about the movies and the pancakes and how Mrs. Alvarez's cat had slept on her feet all night. Ethan listened, made the right noises, but his mind was somewhere else. He dropped Lily off, watched her run toward the building with her dinosaur backpack bouncing, and sat in the parking lot for a long time. He was in too deep. He knew that. This thing with Elena, it had started as something fragile and tentative, something they could walk away from if it didn't work. But now it was real, messy, complicated. And he didn't know how to protect Lily from the fallout if it all went sideways. But he also couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when Elena needed him. So he drove to work and tried to focus on the job. It didn't work. Every time his phone buzzed, he jumped, wondering if it was her. Wondering if the meeting had gone well. Wondering if Richard had won. Finally, at 2 p.m, his phone rang. Ethan? Elena's voice was steady, calm. I need to see you. What happened? Not over the phone. Can you meet me? Same place as last night? When? Now, if you can. He told Jerry he had another emergency and left. The drive felt longer this time, every red light dragging on forever. When he finally reached her building, she was waiting in the lobby, arms crossed, face unreadable. Let's walk, she said. They walked 2 blocks in silence before she finally spoke. I told them no. Ethan stopped. You turned down Richard's offer? I told the board I wasn't interested in a merger, that I'd rather build the company my way, even if it takes longer, than hand it over to someone who doesn't share my vision. What did they say? They split. 3 voted to accept Richard's offer. 4 voted to support me. It was close. Closer than I wanted. But you won. For now. She looked at him. Richard's not going to take this well. He's going to come after me harder. The photos, the stalking, that was just a warning. This is when it gets ugly. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. Let him try. You don't understand. He has resources I can't match. He can make my life hell. So we make his life hell right back. Elena stopped walking. What are you talking about? You said he plays dirty. Fine. So do we. Find out what he's hiding. Everyone has something. We just need to find his. Ethan, that's survival. That's what it is. He turned to face her. You think he's going to stop because you beat him in 1 vote? He's going to keep pushing until you break or give up. So you push back. Harder. Elena stared at him. You're serious? Completely. She shook her head, but there was something like admiration in her eyes. You're a lot tougher than you look. I've had to be. They started walking again, slower this time. Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and showed him the screen. Another photo. This one of her leaving the board meeting an hour ago. Ethan felt rage flood through him, sharp and immediate. That's it, we're going to the police. And telling them what? That someone's taking pictures of me in public? That someone's harassing you, stalking you, that you feel unsafe? They won't do anything, Ethan, not without proof that I'm in immediate danger. Then we get proof. How? He thought about it. Security cameras. Your building has them, right? We pull the footage, see if we can spot someone following you. We document every photo, every message, every time you feel like someone's watching. We build a case. Elena looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. You've thought about this. I've thought about a lot of things since last night. She stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, people flowing around them like water around a rock. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Putting yourself in the line of fire for me. You have a daughter, a life. You don't owe me anything. Ethan looked at her, at the fear she was trying to hide, at the exhaustion etched into her face, at the stubborn strength that kept her standing even when everything was falling apart. I'm doing it because I want to, he said, because you're worth fighting for. And because if I walk away now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Her eyes went glassy. Ethan, don't, just let me help, please. She nodded, blinking hard. Okay. They went back to her apartment and spent the next 3 hours building a timeline. Every photo, every strange car she'd noticed, every moment she'd felt watched. They called the building's security office and requested footage from the parking garage and lobby. The manager was reluctant until Elena mentioned lawyers, and then he suddenly became very cooperative. By 6 o'clock, they had something, a pattern. The same dark sedan appearing in the background of 3 different photos, always at a distance, always just far enough away to avoid being obvious. That's not a coincidence, Ethan said. Elena zoomed in on one of the images. The license plate was partially visible. If we can get the full plate number from the security footage, we can find out who owns the car. They looked at each other, and for the first time all day, Elena smiled. Not a big smile, but real. This might actually work, she said. It will work. She reached for his hand. Thank you. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Alvarez. Lily wants to know if you're coming home for dinner. He felt a stab of guilt. He'd been so focused on Elena he'd barely thought about his daughter all day. I need to go, he said. I know. Go. Be with her. He stood, but Elena didn't let go of his hand. Ethan? Yeah? When this is over, when Richard's gone and things settle down, I want to meet her, Lily, if that's okay. He looked at her, surprised. You sure? I'm sure. If we're doing this, if we're really doing this, then I want to know the most important person in your life. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. This was real. This wasn't just him helping her through a crisis. This was her thinking about a future, about them. Okay, he said, when this is over. When this is over. He kissed her, quick and soft, and left before he could change his mind. The drive home was different this time, lighter, like he'd been carrying something heavy and finally set it down. He picked up Lily from Mrs. Alvarez's, took her to her favorite burger place, and listened to her talk about her day. We learned about the ocean today, she said, dragging a French fry through ketchup. Did you know the ocean is so deep that we've only explored like 5% of it? I didn't know that. And there are fish down there that make their own light. They're called bioluminescent. Isn't that cool? Very cool. She studied him. You seem different today. Different how? I don't know. Less sad. Ethan felt his throat tighten. I'm not sad, kiddo. You are sometimes, when you think I'm not looking. She took a bite of her burger. But today you're not, so that's good. He reached across the table and ruffled her hair. You're too smart for your own good, you know that? Mom used to say that too. They finished dinner in comfortable silence. When they got home, Lily asked if she could stay up late to finish her book, and Ethan said yes. He sat on the couch while she read, half watching TV, half thinking about Elena. Around 9, his phone buzzed, a text from her. The security office sent the footage. We got the license plate. And the car is registered to a private investigation firm, one that Richard has used before. Ethan felt cold satisfaction settle in his chest. That was proof. Not enough to charge Richard with anything, but enough to show a pattern. Enough to take to the police. What do you want to do? Tomorrow we file a report, and then we figure out how to make Richard regret ever coming after me. Ethan smiled. I'm in. That night, after Lily went to bed, Ethan stood in the doorway of her room and watched her sleep. She was curled up with her stuffed triceratops, one arm flung over her head, completely at peace. He'd spent 3 years keeping her safe, keeping their life small and predictable. But somewhere along the way, he'd started living again. And it scared him. Because living meant risking, and risking meant the possibility of losing. But looking at Lily now, he realized something. She didn't need him to be invincible. She didn't need him to never take chances. She just needed him to be present, to show up, to love her enough to keep trying. And he could do that. Even with everything happening with Elena, even with the uncertainty and the danger and the mess, he could do that. He closed the door quietly and went to bed. 2 days later, Elena filed a police report. The officer who took the statement was skeptical, but he wrote everything down. The photos, the car, the connection to Richard's PI firm. He said they'd look into it, but Ethan could tell he didn't expect much to come of it. That's it? Elena asked when they left the station. That's all they're going to do? For now, Ethan said. But it's on record. If anything else happens, we have a paper trail. Elena looked frustrated. I wanted them to do more. I know, but this is how it works. We build the case piece by piece. She took a breath. Okay, so what's next? Next, we talk to your lawyer. We see if there's a legal angle here, harassment, intimidation, anything we can use. And if there isn't, then we keep documenting, and we wait for Richard to make a mistake. Elena nodded, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders. She was scared, and she was trying not to show it. That night, around 11, Ethan's phone rang. He was already in bed, half asleep, and almost didn't answer. But it was Elena. Ethan, her voice was shaking. Someone's outside my building. He sat up. What? I heard something. On the fire escape. I looked out, and there's someone standing there. Did you call 911? I'm calling them now, but I wanted you to know. I'm on my way. Stay on the phone with the police. Don't open the door. Don't go near the windows. Okay, I'll be there in 15 minutes. He was out of bed before the call ended, pulling on jeans and a shirt, grabbing his keys. Mrs. Alvarez wasn't home, but he couldn't leave Lily alone. He ran to the neighbors 2 doors down, pounded on their door until they answered, and asked them to watch her. Then he drove. He made it to Elena's building in 12 minutes, breaking every speed limit. There were 2 police cars outside, lights flashing. He parked illegally and ran inside. Elena was in the lobby with 2 officers. She looked pale, but steady. When she saw him, relief flooded her face. Are you okay? He asked. I'm fine. They checked the fire escape. Whoever it was is gone. One of the officers turned to Ethan. You a friend of Ms. Cross? Yes. She says someone's been following her, harassing her. That's right. We filed a report 2 days ago. The officer nodded. We'll increase patrols in the area, and we'll check with building security, see if they caught anything on camera. Ethan wanted to say more, wanted to demand they do something real, but he knew it wouldn't help, so he just nodded. When the police left, Elena turned to him. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did. What about Lily? Neighbors are watching her. Elena's face crumpled. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called. I panicked. Stop apologizing. He pulled her into his arms. You did the right thing. She held on to him, shaking. I don't know how much more of this I can take. You can take more than you think, but you don't have to do it alone. They stood there in the empty lobby, holding each other, and Ethan made a decision. Pack a bag, he said. What? You're not staying here tonight. You're coming home with me. Ethan, I can't. Yes, you can. You're not safe here, not until we figure this out. So pack a bag and let's go. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay. Elena packed quickly, throwing clothes and toiletries into an overnight bag while Ethan waited by the door. She moved mechanically like she was operating on autopilot, and he could see her hands trembling as she zipped the bag shut. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. They drove through dark streets in silence. Elena stared out the window, arms wrapped around herself, and Ethan kept glancing over to make sure she was okay. She wasn't, but she was here, and that was something. When they pulled into his driveway, the porch light was on. The neighbors had probably turned it on for him. He grabbed Elena's bag and led her inside. The house was quiet. Lily was asleep on the couch in the living room, the neighbor's teenage daughter sitting nearby with her phone. "Everything okay?" the girl asked, standing up. "Fine, thanks for watching her." "No problem, Mr. Cole." She glanced at Elena, curious but polite enough not to ask questions. Ethan walked her to the door, pressed a 20 into her hand despite her protests, and locked up behind her. When he turned around, Elena was standing in the middle of his living room, looking lost. "Guest room's upstairs," he said quietly. "Second door on the left." "Thank you." He carried her bag up, showed her where the bathroom was, where the towels were kept. She followed him like she was in a dream, taking it all in. The family photos on the wall, the stack of Lily's library books on the coffee table, the crayon drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets. "Your home is beautiful," she said. "It's a mess." "No, it's lived in. There's a difference." She touched one of the photos. Ethan and Lily at the beach, both of them grinning, sand in their hair. "She looks just like you." "She has her mother's smile." Elena nodded, didn't push. "I should let you sleep. You've done enough for one night." "You need anything? I'm right across the hall." "Okay." She closed the door and Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. When he didn't hear anything alarming, he went to check on Lily. She was still out cold on the couch, curled up with a blanket the neighbor must have draped over her. He scooped her up, carried her to her room, and tucked her in. She mumbled something about dolphins and didn't wake up. Ethan collapsed into his own bed and stared at the ceiling. His mind was racing. Too much adrenaline. Too many what-ifs. Elena was in his house, in his daughter's orbit. This was real now, not just stolen coffee dates or late-night texts. This was his life and her life, tangling together in a way that couldn't be undone. And he had no idea if that was the best decision he'd ever made or the worst. He woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices downstairs. For a disorienting second, he thought Sarah was back, that the last 3 years had been some terrible dream. Then reality snapped into place, and he remembered. Elena. He pulled on a shirt and went downstairs. Elena was in the kitchen, fully dressed, hair pulled back, looking far more put together than anyone had a right to at 6:30 in the morning. And Lily was sitting at the table, eating cereal, staring at her with open curiosity. "Morning," Ethan said. Lily looked up. "Daddy, who's this?" Elena glanced at Ethan, uncertain. He'd planned to introduce them eventually, but not like this. Not before he'd had a chance to prepare Lily, to explain things in a way that made sense. But life didn't wait for perfect timing. "This is Elena," he said, moving to the coffee pot. "She's a friend. She needed a place to stay last night." "Why?" "Because her apartment wasn't safe." Lily processed that, chewing thoughtfully. Then she turned to Elena. "Are you in trouble?" Elena blinked, caught off guard. "Sort of. Yes." "Is someone being mean to you?" "Very mean." Lily nodded seriously. "That's not okay. People shouldn't be mean." "No, they shouldn't. My daddy's really good at helping people. He helped Mrs. Alvarez fix her car once, and he helped my teacher move a bookshelf. He's strong." Elena's lips twitched. "I've noticed." Ethan poured coffee, feeling heat creep up his neck. "Lily, finish your breakfast. You've got school in 20 minutes. Can Elena drive me? I want to show her my project." "Elena's busy." "Actually," Elena said, "I'd love to see your project." Lily beamed. "It's about sea turtles. Did you know they can live for like 100 years? I didn't know that. And they swim thousands of miles to lay their eggs in the same beach where they were born. Isn't that cool?" "Very cool." Ethan watched them, something warm and terrifying spreading through his chest. Lily had her guard up, with most people, had ever since Sarah died. But she was talking to Elena like they'd known each other for years. 20 minutes later, they were all piled into Ethan's truck. Lily sat in the back seat, chattering nonstop about turtles and ocean currents and plastic pollution. Elena listened, asked questions, didn't talk down to her. By the time they reached the school, Lily had decided Elena was the coolest person she'd ever met. "Bye, Daddy Daddy." "Bye, Takame." "Elena?" She grabbed her backpack and ran toward the building. Ethan watched her go, then looked at Elena. You didn't have to do that.
I wanted to. She's amazing. She is. You've done a good job with her. I don't know about that. Most days I'm just trying not to screw it up. Elena reached over and squeezed his hand. You're doing better than you think. They drove back to the house in silence. When they pulled into the driveway, Elena turned to him. I need to go to the office today, face to face with the team. If I hide, Richard wins. You sure that's safe? It's a public building, security everywhere, and I can't let him control my life. Ethan didn't like it, but he understood. I'm going with you. Ethan, not negotiable. You want to go to the office? Fine. But I'm coming. She looked like she might argue, then nodded. Okay. They stopped at Elena's apartment so she could change into work clothes, then drove downtown. The office building was modern, all glass and steel, with a lobby that echoed when you walked. Elena moved through it with her head high, nodding at the receptionist, ignoring the curious looks from people in the elevator. Her office was on the 15th floor. Ethan followed her inside and she closed the door. I have meetings all morning, she said. You'll be bored. I'll survive. There's a coffee shop downstairs. You can wait there if you want. I'm staying. She smiled despite herself. You're stubborn. You're just figuring that out? The morning crawled. Ethan sat in the corner of her office, scrolling through his phone, occasionally glancing up to watch her work. She was in her element here, sharp, decisive, completely in control. It was hard to reconcile this version of her with the woman who'd been shaking in his arms last night. Around 11, her assistant knocked. Miss Cross? Richard Brennan is here. He says it's urgent. Elena's face went carefully blank. Tell him I'm in a meeting. He said he'll wait. Elena looked at Ethan. He stood. Let him in, Elena said. The assistant hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. A moment later, Richard walked in, all confidence and expensive cologne. He stopped when he saw Ethan. Mr. Cole, what a surprise. Mr. Brennan. Richard turned to Elena. I didn't realize you were taking meetings with crane operators now. Ethan's here at my request, Elena said coolly. What do you want, Richard? I wanted to discuss your decision. Rejecting my offer was short-sighted, Elena, but I'm willing to give you another chance. Better terms this time. I'm not interested. You should be. The market's shifting. Your investors are getting nervous. One bad quarter and they'll jump ship. But with my backing, you'd have stability, security. I have stability. I don't need yours. Richard's smile thinned. Are you sure? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're one disaster away from losing everything. Ethan stepped forward. I think she said she's not interested. Richard's eyes flicked to him, dismissive. This is a private conversation. Not anymore. Richard laughed, but there was no humor in it. Elena, are you really going to let your, what, bodyguard? Boyfriend? Speak for you? Ethan speaks for himself, Elena said, and I agree with him. We're done here, Richard. You can show yourself out. Richard didn't move. You're making a mistake. That's my choice to make. Is it? Or is it his? Richard gestured at Ethan. How long have you two been sleeping together? A month? 2? I wonder what your board would think if they knew their CEO was making decisions based on her personal life. Elena's expression didn't change, but Ethan saw her jaw tighten. Get out. I'm just saying it looks bad. Successful woman, vulnerable after a hostile takeover attempt, turns to the nearest warm body for comfort. People will talk. Ethan moved before he could think about it, closing the distance between them. You need to leave. Now. Richard held his ground. Or what? Or I make you leave. For a second, Ethan thought Richard might actually push it, but then the older man stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. No need for threats. I'm going. He turned to Elena. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Richard left, and the door clicked shut behind him. Elena exhaled, her hands gripping the edge of her desk. Are you okay? Ethan asked. I'm fine. He's an asshole. I know. She looked at him. Thank you for having my back. Always. She crossed the room and kissed him. Not desperate this time, but steady. Sure. When she pulled back, her eyes were clear. I need to make some calls, she said. This ends today. What are you going to do? What I should have done weeks ago. I'm going to bury him.
Ethan had never seen her like this. Focused, ruthless, every ounce of fear burned away and replaced with something harder. She spent the next 3 hours on the phone, calling in favors, reaching out to contacts, piecing together a strategy that Ethan only half understood. By mid-afternoon, she'd assembled a file. Financial records, emails, testimony from former employees. A pattern of intimidation, harassment, hostile takeovers built on fear rather than merit. This is enough to destroy his reputation, she said, sliding the file across the desk. If I leak this to the press, he's done. Then do it. It's not that simple. If I go public, he'll retaliate. He'll drag my name through the mud, accuse me of fabricating evidence, make it a he said, she said. And in this industry, he'll win because he's a man and I'm not. Ethan stared at the file. So what's the alternative? I go to his biggest investors. Show them what he's really like. Let them decide whether they want to keep backing someone who operates this way. And if they don't care, then I've lost nothing. But if they do, if even one of them pulls out, it'll start a domino effect. Richard's empire is built on reputation. Without it, he's just another bitter old man with too much money and not enough sense. Ethan looked at her. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? Since the night he made his first offer, I knew he wouldn't stop, so I started digging. She tapped the file. This is the result. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know if I'd have the guts to use it. But after last night, after someone showed up at my apartment, after he walked in here and tried to intimidate me in my own office, I'm done playing defense. Ethan felt a surge of pride. Then let's finish this. Elena made the first call at 4 o'clock. By 5, she'd spoken to 3 of Richard's top investors. By 6, 2 of them had agreed to meet with her. By 7, the first cracks were showing. When her phone rang at 7:30, Ethan knew who it was before she answered. Richard? Her voice was ice. Ethan couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he could see Elena's expression, calm, unyielding. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. If your investors are questioning you, maybe you should ask yourself why. A pause. No, Richard, I'm not backing down. I'm done being scared of you. Another pause, longer this time. You can threaten me all you want, but I'm not the same person you thought you could break. And if you come after me again, if you send another PI to follow me, if you show up at my office uninvited, if you so much as look at me wrong, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. She hung up. Ethan stared at her. What did he say? That I've made a powerful enemy, that I'll regret this. And I told him to do his worst. She set the phone down. It's done. Whatever happens now, I can live with it. Ethan crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. She held on to him, and for the first time in weeks, she felt solid. Not fragile, not scared, just strong. Let's go home, he said. Home? My place. Unless you want to go back to your apartment. No, your place is good. They drove back through rush hour traffic, the city lights blurring past the windows. Elena was quiet, staring out at nothing, and Ethan let her be. She'd just gone to war. She needed time to process. When they got home, Lily was at Mrs. Alvarez's again. Ethan texted to let her know he'd pick Lily up after dinner, then turned to Elena. You hungry? Not really. When's the last time you ate? She thought about it. Yesterday? That's what I thought. Sit. I'll make something. He pulled out ingredients, started cooking. Nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables. The kind of meal he could make without thinking. Elena sat at the kitchen table watching him work. You're good at this, she said. At cooking? At taking care of people. I've had practice. With Lily. And with you, apparently. She smiled. I'm not usually this much work. You're not work. I feel like work. Like I'm this broken thing you have to keep fixing. Ethan set the spoon down and turned to face her. You're not broken. You're dealing with a situation that would flatten most people. And you're still standing. That's not broken. That's strong. Elena's eyes filled. I don't feel strong. You don't have to feel it for it to be true. She wiped at her eyes, frustrated with herself. I don't cry. I never cry. Maybe you should more often. Why? Because holding everything in doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you tired. She laughed, a wet, shaky sound. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just know what it's like to try to hold it all together and pretend you're fine when you're not. Elena stood, crossed the kitchen, and wrapped her arms around him from behind. Ethan covered her hands with his, and they stood there while the pasta boiled, neither of them saying anything. They ate in comfortable silence. Afterward, Elena helped with the dishes, and they ended up on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not giving up on me. I'm not going anywhere. Even if this gets worse before it gets better, even then. She tilted her head to look at him. Why? Because you're worth it, and because I'm tired of being alone. Elena kissed him, and this time it was different. Not desperate, not tentative, just real. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. I should go pick up Lily, Ethan said. Okay. You'll be here when I get back? Where else would I go? He kissed her forehead and left. When he returned 20 minutes later with Lily chattering about her day, Elena was still on the couch, looking more relaxed than he'd seen her in weeks. Lily ran over. Elena, you're still here! I am. Are you staying again? Elena glanced at Ethan. If that's okay. It's okay with me, Lily said. Daddy? It's fine, Lily grinned. Cool. Can you help me with my homework? We're learning about food chains. Elena laughed. I'd love to. They spent the next hour at the kitchen table, Lily explaining predators and prey, while Elena asked questions and Ethan made popcorn. It was domestic and strange and perfect in a way that made Ethan's chest ache. At bedtime, Lily hugged Elena goodnight like it was the most natural thing in the world. I like her, Lily whispered to Ethan as he tucked her in. Yeah? Yeah, she's nice, and she's smart, and she doesn't treat me like a baby. She is all those things. Are you going to marry her? Ethan froze. What? Like you married Mommy. Are you going to marry Elena? I don't know, kiddo. We're just figuring things out. Okay. But if you do, that would be cool. I think Mommy would like her. Ethan's throat went tight. You think so? Yeah. Because she makes you smile. And Mommy always wanted you to be happy. He kissed her forehead, unable to speak. When he came back downstairs, Elena was standing by the window, looking out at the dark street. Everything okay? He asked. I was just thinking about what happens next. What do you mean? Richard's not going to just disappear. Even if his investors pull out, even if his reputation takes a hit, he's still dangerous. And he knows where I live, where I work. He could come after me again. Ethan moved to stand beside her. Then we make sure he doesn't. How? We stay ahead of him. We keep documenting everything. We keep building the case. And if he makes one wrong move, we bury him. Elena nodded slowly. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's doable. She turned to face him. Lily asked if we're getting married, didn't she? Ethan blinked. How did you know? Because she's 7 and curious and probably trying to figure out where I fit in her world. What would you have said if she asked you? Elena thought about it. I would have said it's too soon to know, but that I care about her dad a lot and that I'm not going anywhere. Good answer. Is it true? Which part? That you're not going anywhere. Elena looked at him, and in her eyes he saw everything, the fear, the hope, the determination. I'm not going anywhere, Ethan. Not unless you want me to. I don't. Then I'm here, for as long as you'll have me. He pulled her close, and they stood there in the quiet, holding each other while the world outside kept spinning. Whatever came next, whatever Richard threw at them, whatever challenges they'd have to face, they'd face it together. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan believed things might actually be okay. The call came 3 days later, early enough that Ethan was still making coffee. Elena's phone lit up on the counter, and when she saw the name, her whole body went rigid. It's one of Richard's investors, she said. Answer it. She did, putting it on speaker. This is Elena. Ms. Cross, this is David Chen. We met briefly at the industry conference last year. I remember. What can I do for you? I wanted to let you know that as of this morning, I've withdrawn my investment from Richard Brennan's portfolio. After reviewing the information you provided, I found several inconsistencies that raise serious concerns about his business practices. Elena's eyes widened. I appreciate you letting me know. You should also know that I'm not the only one. 3 other major investors are pulling out by end of week. Richard's going to have a significant capital problem very soon. Thank you for telling me. No, thank you for having the courage to speak up. Men like Richard rely on silence. You broke that. He paused. I'd like to discuss potential opportunities with your company when things settle down. I think you're building something special. I'd welcome that conversation. When the call ended, Elena set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. Then she looked at Ethan, and her face crumpled. It worked, she whispered. It actually worked. He pulled her into his arms, and she shook against him, not from fear this time, but from relief so intense it was almost painful. You did it, he said into her hair. We did it. No, this was you. I just stood next to you while you fought. She pulled back, wiping at her eyes. I couldn't have done it without you. Maybe, but you're the one who had the guts to pull the trigger. The next week unfolded like dominoes falling. 2 more investors pulled out. Richard's company announced it was restructuring. 3 business deals he'd been negotiating collapsed. And then, on Friday morning, the financial news sites picked up the story. Elena's phone rang non-stop. Reporters wanting comments, industry contacts offering support, potential clients suddenly very interested in working with her. She handled it with the same controlled precision she brought to everything, giving careful statements, deflecting the uglier questions, never once mentioning Richard by name. Let his reputation speak for itself, she told Ethan that night. I don't need to add to it. You're better than he deserves. I'm just tired of fighting. I want to move forward. And she did. Over the next month, Elena rebuilt. She secured 2 major contracts that Richard had been trying to steal. She brought on 3 new clients who'd been watching from the sidelines, waiting to see if she'd survive. She promoted Jerry to senior site manager and gave raises to the crew who'd stuck with her through everything. The company stabilized. Then it grew. Ethan watched it happen from his crane cab, 50 feet above the construction site, moving steel and concrete while Elena moved mountains. She still visited occasionally, but now it was different. She wasn't proving anything anymore. She was just checking in, making sure the work was good. The crew was safe. And every time she left, she'd catch his eye across the yard, and he'd see it. The quiet acknowledgement that they'd made it through the worst of it together. But Richard wasn't completely gone. He was wounded, diminished, but not destroyed. And wounded animals were the most dangerous kind. The message came on a Tuesday evening. Ethan was helping Lily with her math homework when Elena's name flashed on his phone. He almost didn't answer. Lily was struggling with fractions, and he was trying to explain why you couldn't just add the bottoms together, but something made him pick up. Elena? He's filing a lawsuit. Her voice was tight. Defamation, tortious interference, breach of fiduciary duty. He's claiming I sabotaged his business relationships with false information. Ethan felt his stomach drop. Can he win? I don't know. Probably not. But he can drag it out for years. Cost me hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Make my life hell even if he loses. What do you need? I need to think. I need to figure out how to fight this without letting it consume everything I've built. Come over. We'll figure it out together. She arrived an hour later, still in her work clothes, carrying a briefcase full of legal documents. Lily was already in bed, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Elena spread the papers across the kitchen table. My lawyer says we have a strong defense. Everything I told those investors was documented, factual, but Richard's arguing that I presented it in a misleading way, that I intentionally damaged his reputation for competitive gain. Ethan scanned the documents. The legal language was dense, impenetrable, but the intent was clear. Richard was going scorched earth. How long could this take, he asked. 2 years, maybe 3. And even if we win, it'll cost me. Time, money, focus, everything I should be putting into growing the company. So settle. Elena looked at him like he'd suggested surrender. What? Settle. Give him something that doesn't matter and make this go away. I'm not giving him anything. Not even to end it? especially not to end it. If I settle, he wins. He gets to tell everyone I backed down because I knew I was wrong. And the next person he goes after will face the same thing, except they won't have the resources to fight back. Ethan understood. This wasn't about Richard anymore. This was about principle, about drawing a line and refusing to cross it. Okay, he said, then we fight. It's going to get ugly. It's already ugly. It could affect you too. You're a witness to some of this. He might try to depose you, make you testify. Let him try. Elena reached across the table and took his hand. I don't want to drag you deeper into this. You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm choosing to be here. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, we fight. The lawsuit consumed the next 6 months. Depositions, document requests, endless meetings with lawyers who billed by the minute. Elena handled it the way she handled everything, methodically, relentlessly, refusing to let it break her. But Ethan saw the toll it took. The late nights, the stress lines around her eyes, the way she'd drift off mid-conversation, her mind somewhere else. She was still staying at his place most nights. It had become routine without either of them really deciding it. But she was present less and less, even when she was physically there. One night, Ethan found her in the kitchen at 2 a.m, surrounded by legal briefs and cold coffee. You need to sleep, he said. I need to finish this. It'll still be there in the morning. So will the deadline. He sat down across from her. Elena, look at me. She did, reluctantly. This is important. I get that. But you're running yourself into the ground. I don't have a choice. You do. You can let your lawyers handle some of this. You can delegate. You can take one night off without the world ending. You don't understand. If I lose focus for even a second, then what? Richard wins? He's already lost, Elena. His investors are gone. His reputation is shot. This lawsuit is just him lashing out because he can't accept that you beat him. But if he wins in court, he won't. You've got the truth on your side. You've got documentation. You've got me and Jerry and a dozen other people who'll testify to what really happened. He's grasping at straws. Elena's hands were shaking. I'm scared. I know. Not of losing, of what it costs to win. I've put everything into fighting him. Time, money, energy, and I don't know what's left when it's over. Ethan stood, walked around the table, and pulled her to her feet. What's left is your company. Your team, Lily, me, the life you're building. That's what's left. She buried her face in his shoulder. What if it's not enough? It's more than enough. You're just too tired to see it. He led her upstairs, made her lie down, and sat on the edge of the bed until she fell asleep. Then he went back downstairs, gathered up all the legal documents, and put them in her briefcase. Tomorrow she could fight. Tonight, she needed rest. The trial date got pushed back twice. Richard's lawyers kept filing motions, requesting extensions, doing everything they could to draw it out. Elena's legal bills climbed into the 6 figures, but she didn't back down, and slowly, imperceptibly, the tide began to turn. Richard made mistakes. He gave an interview to a business magazine where he called Elena emotional and vindictive. The quote went viral, and suddenly people were paying attention. Women in business started speaking up, sharing their own stories about Richard's behavior. Former employees came forward with complaints about his management style. The narrative shifted from he said, she said, to a pattern of misconduct spanning decades. Elena's lawyer called it a gift. Ethan called it karma. The trial finally started on a Monday in March. Ethan took the week off work and sat in the gallery every day, watching Elena and her legal team dismantle Richard's case piece by piece. They presented emails, financial records, testimony from investors who confirmed that everything Elena had told them was accurate. They showed a pattern of intimidation and harassment that went back years. Richard's lawyers tried to paint Elena as a competitor who'd used underhanded tactics to sabotage a rival, but the evidence didn't support it. Every claim she'd made was backed up by documentation. Every conversation she'd had was consistent with the facts. On the 4th day, Richard himself took the stand. He was polished, confident, playing the role of the wronged businessman. But under cross-examination, he started to crack. He got defensive, then angry. He contradicted himself. He made claims that his own lawyers visibly winced at. By the time he stepped down, it was clear he'd done more damage to his case than Elena ever could. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous, not guilty on all counts. Elena stood perfectly still as the judge read the decision, her face carefully neutral. But when it was over, when the gavel came down and it was really, truly finished, she turned to Ethan and the mask finally slipped. He saw everything in her eyes: relief, exhaustion, vindication, grief for the years she'd lost fighting this battle. He stood, and she walked straight into his arms, and they held each other while her lawyer shook hands with the opposing counsel, and the courtroom slowly emptied around them. "It's over," she whispered. "It's over. I can't believe it's really over." Believe it. They left the courthouse together, stepping out into afternoon sunlight that felt brighter than it should. Reporters were waiting, cameras rolling, shouting questions. Elena stopped, straightened her shoulders, and gave a brief statement. "I'm grateful for the jury's decision and for the legal system that allowed the truth to come to light. This was never about personal animosity. It was about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. I hope this sends a message that intimidation and harassment have no place in business or anywhere else." She didn't take questions. She just walked to Ethan's truck and got in. They drove in silence for a while. Then Elena said, "I need to do something." "What?" "I don't know yet. Something that reminds me why I started this company in the first place. Something that's not about fighting or defending or proving myself, just building something good." Ethan thought about it. "You could start that mentorship program you talked about. The one for women trying to break into construction management." Elena looked at him. "You remember that? You mentioned it once, months ago. Said you wished someone had helped you when you were starting out." "I did say that." She was quiet for a moment. "That's actually a really good idea. I have them occasionally." She smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her in months. "More than occasionally." Over the next few weeks, Elena threw herself into the mentorship program with the same intensity she'd brought to fighting Richard. She recruited industry veterans, set up a curriculum, reached out to universities and trade schools. Within 2 months, she had her first cohort, 12 women, ranging from recent graduates to career changers, all eager to learn. Ethan watched her come back to life. The stress lines faded. The late nights became less frequent. She started sleeping through the night again, started laughing at Lily's terrible jokes, started looking forward instead of constantly checking over her shoulder. And somewhere in all of that, their relationship shifted from survival mode to something quieter and more sustainable. They had dinner together most nights. They took Lily to the park on weekends. They fell into routines that felt less like temporary arrangements and more like building a life. One Saturday morning, Elena and Lily were in the kitchen making pancakes while Ethan sat at the table reading the news on his phone. He looked up and saw them, Lily explaining the proper pancake flipping technique while Elena listened with exaggerated seriousness, and felt something settle in his chest. This was it. This was what he'd been afraid to want for 3 years. Not perfection, not a replacement for what he'd lost, just a second chance at something real. That afternoon, while Lily was at a birthday party, Ethan and Elena went for a drive. No destination, just open road and conversation. They talked about the mentorship program, about Lily's upcoming science fair, about whether they should get a dog. "Lily's been asking," Ethan said. What do you think?" "I think she'd love it. And I think it would be good for her. Give her something to take care of." "What about you? Would it be good for you?" He glanced over. "Are we still talking about the dog?" Elena smiled. "Maybe not." He pulled over into a rest area, put the truck in park, and turned to face her. "What are we talking about?" "About what happens next. We've been in crisis mode for so long, I don't think either of us has stopped to figure out what we're doing when there's no crisis." "What do you want to be doing?" "I want this. You, me, Lily. I want to keep building something that matters. I want to wake up and not be afraid of what the day is going to bring." "That sounds good to me. But I need to know if you're in this for real, not just because I needed help or because it was convenient, but because you want it." Ethan reached for her hand. "I'm in this because you make me want to be brave again, because Lily lights up when you walk in the room, because for the first time since Sarah died, I can imagine a future that doesn't feel empty." He paused. "I'm in this because I love you." Elena's eyes went glassy. "You've never said that before." I'm saying it now. I love you too. I have for a while. I just didn't know if it was okay to say it. It's okay. She leaned across the console and kissed him, and it felt like a promise, like a beginning instead of a middle. When they got back to the house, Lily was already home from the party, bouncing with excitement. Can we get a dog, please? Sarah's family just got a puppy, and it's so cute, and I promise I'll walk it every day and feed it and everything. Ethan looked at Elena. She shrugged, smiling. Okay, he said. We can look at dogs. Lily shrieked and threw her arms around both of them. This is the best day ever! That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan and Elena sat on the back porch, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Elena said quietly. What do you mean? For something to go wrong, for Richard to file another lawsuit, or for my company to hit a rough patch, or for you to realize you don't actually want this level of chaos in your life. Elena.
I know it's irrational, but I spent so long fighting that I don't know how to just be. Ethan pulled her closer. So we learn. Together. No more fighting. Just living. That sounds nice. It does, doesn't it?
They sat in comfortable silence, and Ethan thought about all the ways life could surprise you. 3 years ago, he'd been convinced he'd never feel anything again, that the best he could hope for was getting through each day without falling apart. And now here he was, building something new with someone who understood that broken didn't mean unfixable. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of her company's board of directors and announced a major expansion. They were opening 2 new offices, hiring 50 additional employees, and launching a charitable foundation focused on getting more women into skilled trades. The board approved it unanimously. Afterward, she called Ethan from the car. We did it. The expansion's approved. That's amazing. Congratulations. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. Come to the office tonight. I want to celebrate. Bring Lily. It's a school night. So we'll celebrate early. I just want you both here. When they arrived, the office was full of people. Elena's team, some of the mentorship program participants, even Jerry, and a few guys from the construction crew. There was food, music, an atmosphere of genuine celebration. Lily ran off to talk to one of the mentees who'd promised to show her pictures of a job site. Elena found Ethan in the crowd and pulled him aside. There's something I need to tell you, she said. What? Richard's company filed for bankruptcy this morning. He's done. Finished. Ethan absorbed that. How do you feel? Relieved, sad, vindicated, tired. She looked up at him. Mostly I feel grateful that I don't have to think about him anymore, that I can just focus on building instead of defending. That's all you ever wanted. Not all, but it's a start. Across the room, Lily laughed at something someone said, and the sound carried over the music and conversation. Elena smiled. She's happy, she said. She is. She likes having you around. I like being around, both of you. Good. Because I don't think we're letting you go. Elena turned to face him fully. What if I told you I'm thinking about selling my apartment and finding somewhere with a yard? Somewhere Lily could have that dog she keeps talking about? I'd say that sounds like a good idea. And if I asked whether you'd want to help me look at houses? Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. I'd say I know a good neighborhood, good schools, close to work. Oh yeah? Tell me about it. It's quiet, safe. The neighbors are friendly. There's a park 2 blocks away. He paused. And there's a house on my street that just went up for sale. Elena's eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. I drove past it this morning. It's got 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, room for an office. You should at least look at it. Ethan Cole, are you asking me to move to your street? I'm suggesting it might be convenient for coordinating school pickups and dog walking and other things. She laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. Other things? Many other things. She kissed him, and somewhere in the background someone whistled. They broke apart, both grinning. Okay, Elena said. Let's look at the house. They did. And 3 months later, Elena moved in. Not to Ethan's house, but to the one 2 doors down. Close enough to be together whenever they wanted, separate enough that they each had space. It was unconventional, but it worked. Lily loved it. She had 2 houses to bounce between, 2 yards to play in, and the dog they eventually adopted, a rescue mutt named Charlie, who was equal parts energy and affection, split his time between both places, just like Lily did. Life settled into a rhythm. Ethan worked at the construction site. Elena grew her company. Lily went to school and asked impossible questions, and slowly, carefully, led Elena into the space Sarah had left behind. Not as a replacement, never as a replacement, but as someone new and important in her own right. One evening, almost a year after the trial ended, Ethan found Elena in her office, staring at a framed photo on her desk. It was from the day the mentorship program's first cohort graduated. 12 women in hard hats grinning at the camera, holding their certificates. "You okay?" he asked. "I was just thinking about how different things are now. A year ago, I was fighting just to survive. And now," she gestured around the office, "now I'm building something that actually matters." "It always mattered." "Maybe, but it feels different now, like I'm not just proving I can do this. I'm doing it because I want to, because it's important." Ethan sat on the edge of her desk. "That's called growth." "Is it?" "That's what my therapist says anyway." Elena looked up, surprised. "You're seeing a therapist?" "For about 6 months now. Lily's teacher suggested it, said I might be dealing with some unprocessed grief." And she was right. Turns out you can't just ignore trauma and hope it goes away. Elena reached for his hand. "How's it going?" "It's hard, but good. I'm figuring out how to remember Sarah without feeling like I'm drowning, how to be grateful for what I had without being destroyed by what I lost." "I'm proud of you." "For going to therapy?" "For doing the work. For not taking the easy route." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I learned from the best." They sat there in comfortable silence, and Ethan thought about all the ways people broke and healed and broke again. About how strength wasn't about never falling apart. It was about getting back up, even when every part of you wanted to stay down. That night, they had dinner at Ethan's house. Him, Elena, Lily, and Charlie, who begged shamelessly under the table. Lily told them about her day, about the field trip to the aquarium, and the octopus that had waved at her through the glass. "Did you wave back?" Elena asked. "Obviously, it would have been rude not to." After dinner, Lily went to do homework, and Ethan and Elena cleaned up together. It was domestic and mundane, and exactly what Ethan had been too afraid to want for so long. "I think we're doing okay," Elena said, drying a plate. "Better than okay." "Yeah." She set the plate down, turned to face him. "I keep waiting for it to feel too good to be true. But it just feels true. That's because it is. I love you." "I love you too." They finished the dishes and went to check on Lily. She was at her desk, surrounded by textbooks and papers, frowning at a math problem. Charlie was sprawled at her feet. "Need help?" Ethan asked. "I got it. Mrs. Patterson says I'm getting better at fractions." "That's because you're brilliant." "I know." She grinned at him, gap-toothed and confident, and Ethan felt his chest expand with pride. Later, when Lily was asleep and Charlie was snoring on the couch, and Elena was curled against Ethan's side, he thought about the long road that had brought them here. The grief, the fear, the desperate fight for survival. The moments when he'd thought he wouldn't make it. The moments when Elena had thought the same thing. And he realized that the strongest things weren't the ones that never broke. They were the ones that broke and came back together, different but whole. Life wasn't about avoiding pain or pretending everything was fine. It was about showing up anyway, about choosing to be brave even when you were terrified, about letting people in even when every instinct screamed to stay protected. It was about loving imperfectly and trying anyway. Ethan looked down at Elena, at the woman who'd walked into his life demanding better from herself and everyone around her, who'd fought when it would have been easier to surrender, who'd chosen him and Lily even when it complicated everything. "Thank you," he said quietly. She stirred. "For what?" "For not giving up. On the company. On fighting Richard. On us. Thank you for being the kind of person worth not giving up on." He kissed the top of her head, and they lay there in the quiet, two people who'd survived their pasts and built something worth protecting. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges. Work, school, bills, the 1,000 small crises that made up everyday life. But tonight, they had this, each other. Lily asleep down the hall, Charlie snoring on the couch, a home that felt lived in and loved. And that was more than enough. It was everything.